Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and I hope you're all doing well on this, is it Tuesday? Is it Wednesday? I think it's Wednesday. Wednesday afternoon. I lose track of days all the time. If you're tuning in live here on Behance, let me know in the chat who you are and where you're tuning in from. If you're on YouTube, head on over to behance.net/Adobe Live so we can chat along together. We've got Nicole and Samuel, Umacorn, Manindir, if I mispronounce your name, I do apologize. Andrew and Ruth, great to see all of you. Andres and Chris, Aubrey from Boston, Samuel from rainy Los Angeles. What is happening in Los Angeles? I lived in Los Angeles for a few years. I probably saw rain once. So it's raining over there. It must be the end of time. All right, let's go ahead and hop over to my screen and we're gonna get going. So head on over to behance.net/challenge/XD. You're gonna find all the information about the Daily Creative Challenge. And this challenge is running from March 1st to March 26th, and we'll have 9 challenges in total. Go ahead and press that big blue register button at the top if you haven't yet. Every single day you're gonna receive a challenge, Monday to Friday, except the first Monday. And Andrew says, Manchester in the UK. We've got someone from Maryland. And Bruce is in the house, great to see you. North Carolina. People from all over, this is awesome. So you can join us in our Discord community chat. I'm gonna hop over here just for a second. We have about 60,000 designers in Discord. That's a lot of people. And there are almost 2,000 people online right now, 1,963. If you're not in Discord, hop into Discord. It's a wonderful community. Even with 60,000 people in there, there's like no trolls, which is amazing, right? Very difficult to find, but we have an amazing community in Discord. You can get information about the daily challenges. You can ask questions, share tips and tricks, career advice, find people to collaborate with, but you can also hop into the challenge channel and you'll be able to share the work that you're working on for the Daily Creative Challenge. And ooh, look at this. Is that Bruce who was just posting in yes, that looks like the same avatar. Bruce has got some 3D transforms going on. Well, that's fancy, isn't it? A lot of really good stuff in here. And I mispronounced your name earlier, so I'm not gonna say it again, but you are in the chat and this looks fantastic. I love the colors of this. Look at that. Great work. All right, so that's Discord. You can also watch us live. We're streaming basically all day. You can watch me live 2 o'clock Pacific time when I am hosting these challenges. And like I mentioned, you can share your work on Discord or on Behance with the keyword XD Daily Challenge. All right, so yesterday we started off the process with our pricing tables. And we used repeat grids to help speed up that process. And today we are going to be looking at how to build out a sign-up form using components for quick editing. So let's go ahead and hop over. Go ahead and press that get started button if you haven't already. And XD is right over here. Here is the template for today. The prompt is at the top. And if you want to catch up on this challenge afterwards, or you may have downloaded this template a little bit earlier, there's a video right down here. There's a link. You can watch exactly how this was done in a more condensed version of this live stream without the chitter chatter at the beginning. Alrighty, so let's hop over to our artboard right over here. And like I mentioned yesterday and on Monday, all these challenges revolve around web design. Oh, you can call me Manny. That works. That's probably a little bit easier. All right, first time watching live from Australia. Great to see you, Square Voyage 753. All right, so like I mentioned, all these challenges are revolving around web design. But of course, you can take what you learn in these challenges, alter them for mobile design, desktop design, watch design possibly. Who knows? Get creative. All right, so we have our artboard right here, and I'm thinking we're gonna go a little bit blue for this particular challenge. So I'm gonna just set the artboard color at a very, with a very, subtle blue, just to give a little bit of blue in there, right? Maybe I'll drop this right about there, right? Something like that. All right, now in the middle of this particular artboard, we want to start the process of building out our form, and we're gonna start with a container. So I'm gonna grab the good old rectangle tool from the left-hand side and draw one out right about here. I'm not too concerned about the size at the moment, because as we start adding in content, especially if we start talking about stacks and padding, which we'll get to in a future challenge, then the container will automatically adjust. So I'm not worried at the moment. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to grab one of these handles on the inside and round out the corners to around, let's try 24 pixels. You can also do that within your properties inspector over to the right. I'm gonna set the color at a nice, vibrant blue. I said I was going blue, right? We're going blue. Now on the inside of this container, just to add a little bit of separation, we're gonna add a border, set it to white, maybe bump up the size a little bit, and then just drop the opacity a touch. So there's a little bit of a bevel on there, very subtle, right? And then if you want, always optional, you can add a bit of a shadow. And I talk about shadows a lot, keep them subtle, blur it a lot. And then if you want to, if you're feeling a little bit adventurous, add a bit of color in there. We're gonna add a little bit of blue. Again, very subtle shadow, right? We're gonna blur it even more. So it's there, but it's also not there, right? There we go. A happy little shadow, right? All right, now on the inside, we can start adding in some of our content. We're gonna start very simple. I'm gonna grab the text tool over to the left, click, and we're gonna type out sign up. Now, obviously we have a problem, right? This blue text against the blue background, not gonna work. So I'm gonna start by making it a little bit larger, and then we're gonna switch the color over to white. Now, right now from the last challenge, we have Josephine Sands as our typeface. It's not bad, right? But let's go basic Sands. It's got a little bit of a style to it. It's kind of fun, right? I'm gonna position it in the center right about here. And right below this, we may want some additional text to let users know what exactly they're signing up for. So I'm gonna grab the text tool one more time, and instead of clicking, we're gonna click and drag across our artboard to define an auto height text box. And let's go ahead and type out, let's get you all registered. Did I spell that right? Register, I think so. There we go. Now, obviously, way too big, right? We have our sign up, which is our header at the top, which I'm gonna go ahead and just add that as a character style over within my assets. And we have our sub information. Now this is way too big, so I'm gonna drop it quite a bit. Let's try 18, see what that looks like. And I might drop the weight a little bit as well. Let's try semi-bold. Just wanna drop it a little bit. We want it to make sure that it's still legible. And then we're gonna drop the line height as well. I might wanna bump that up just a little bit so there's a little bit of room. And now we have this, this little text at the bottom, single word. Some people call it a widow down there. Not a big fan of that word, but we have a little text. Typically you want to stray away from that. So you can either bring this in, right? So that we have, at least 2 words down there, or you can make the text a little bit larger. I am happy with the size of this text. I'm gonna go ahead and press the play button at the top. Actually, I'm not happy with the size of that text. It looks a little bit small. And this is the importance of checking out that preview once in a while. So I'm gonna undo that. Let's bump this up to 22. That's a little bit better. I'm gonna bump up the line height a little bit, and then maybe bring this in one more time. And then I'm gonna bring this up, possibly. No, I think that's fine. It will do, pig, it'll do. All right, so we have that there, and then right below we might want one more text layer. I'm gonna duplicate this down and click on each box below to enter your information. Now this is like tertiary information, right? So I'm gonna drop this in size even more. Let's go back to 18 and let's drop it in weight to about regular, move it down a touch, and space this out. Now I'm imagining, because this is a sign-up form for a doctor's appointment, this may be used by a lot of elderly patients. We want to make sure that the text is large enough that they can see it and that there's a lot of contrast. White on blue is definitely going to work, right? All right, so now we can start the process of actually, there we go, creating some components down here for the various fields that they're going to be entering into. So I'm going to grab the rectangle tool and I'm going to draw one out across this artboard. Now on this line here, I actually want 2 text fields. And the reason I'm doing this, and I do this a lot, right? Let me just take a quick peek, make it a little bit longer. The reason I'm doing this is so that I can make sure that both of these text fields will fit in this particular space. So I have this one container, which I'm going to round out a little bit. Let's go for 12 pixels, looks pretty good. It might be a bit too much. Let's go for 8. And then in the properties inspector, right over here to the right, you can actually do math equations, because doing them yourself, not about that life, right? So it's $4.99. I'm simply going to divide by 2, right? And that'll fit perfectly, but we want a little bit of padding. So I'm just going to, let's say, -8. Bring that in a touch, right? And that will allow us to drag out eventually an additional one with a little bit of padding there. But what we want to do is create our first component. So I have this field, this rectangle right here. On the inside, we want some text. So let's go ahead and type out first name. And we're going to position it on top of this container. Now, obviously we can't see it at the moment. So we're going to grab our eyedropper tool, shortcut key I, and click. Also, if you have that color inside of your assets, you can either click on that to define it, or you can add the color there as well. Let's go ahead and bump this up to bold. We want a nice amount of contrast. And that looks pretty good. We're going to make sure to left align it. Let's take a quick peek. That looks pretty good. All right, digging it. So we have our first field created. And now what we want to do is create our first component so that we can use the exact same style, and we'll be able to update this on all of our different text fields, right? So I have the text layer selected. I'm also going to select this field in the back, hold down my shift key and click. And then over within the properties inspector to the right, or within your assets over here to the left, which is this icon at the bottom, you can press the plus button. It's going to add everything that you had selected as a single component, and I'm going to call this field. Now what I can do is I can start adding additional ones. I can either drag them out directly from the assets, or I can simply copy and paste or drag it over, right? And now we have 2 fields. I'm going to dive into this one and call this last name, right? And then within your layers panel, what I would do in this case is simply select both of these, group them. I'm going to call this name. And we're going to talk more about stacks in an upcoming challenge, but what I would typically do is turn a stack on for this particular group. That way, I don't see myself doing this, but that way, you know, if you have to, you can always swap them around, right? All right, so that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and add in another component. Now this one is going to be an email address field. It might be a bit longer than your first name and your last name, so I'm going to drag one out. I love how Manny changed her name so it's easier to read for me. Thank you, I appreciate that. And I do apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. I don't intend to. All right, so we have another field here, and I'm going to dive in here and type out email address. Duplicate one down, and let's go for phone number. So we have now 4 text fields that we've created, and they're all using the exact same component. And I should probably talk a little bit about main components and instances. If you'll notice, on this first component that we created, the solid diamond at the top left indicates that this is a main component. So any changes you want to make to all of the other instances, you're going to make to this, right? And then all of these ones, these are instances. And let me actually drag another one out. Whoops, I was in the group with the stack. This one over here with the hollow diamond, this is an instance, meaning it's not the main component, it's just an instance of that main component. And then we have this one over here. This one has a hollow diamond with a dot in the middle. That means you've gone in and manually overrode certain properties. And in this case, we manually overrode the text layer. But what's really cool about components is that even on the ones that you have overridden, let's say for example, I just changed the background color of this. Let me drop the opacity. Maybe this is an inactive state, right? So even on the instances that you have overridden, they still remain linked back to the main component. So if I go to this main component here and I decide to make changes, Maybe I'll round out the corners completely. I don't recommend it for text fields, but just for the example, it still pushed those changes to not only the unoverridden instances, but also the overridden ones, because that particular property, the rounded corners, was not overridden. So components are super cool, and they're very flexible. All right, so we have all this information up here looking pretty good. I may want to space this out a little bit, just so that everything's nice and accessible. And then down below, we might want some additional information, possibly, first available dates for the doctor's appointment. So let's go ahead and grab the text tool. Click to select. And we're going to go ahead and change the color to white. The size looks pretty good. I think that'll work. And then what we'll want to do is add in some additional dates. Or dates, we haven't added any yet. So we're gonna add in some dates. We're gonna grab the good old rectangle tool one more time, drag one out, and we're gonna use the same trick that I used earlier using division. Of course, you don't have to do this. You can use repeat grids, you can use a whole different, or you can eyeball it. I like this way. It works, right? Let's go for 8 pixels like we did previously. And this will have a little bit of a different style, but what we're going to do is we're going to, in the properties inspector, we're going to divide by 3. And then we are going to -8. And you can do that all at once. You can divide by 3 -8, or you can press return and, then minus whatever. All right. Wow, when you zone out for a second and go, what? Oops. Did I do that? I do sometimes, right? All right, so we have this looking pretty good. I'm gonna make this a little bit longer, take a quick peek. It's a nice looking shape. Now on the inside, we might wanna put, let's say March 2nd. And then what you can do is actually select the N and the D and then superscript right over here to the right, boop, wonderful. Pop it on top, sample this background color, or just choose the color from your assets. I'm gonna make sure it's centered. It's a little bit small, I think. So I might want to bump this up. That's looking a little bit better. Now, this one over here might be our active state, right? So what I'm going to do is, or the one that's selected, I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow on this. So I'm going to add a bit of a shadow, and I'm going to set the color a little bit of a blue on there. I'm going to bump it down on the y-axis, blur it a little bit, or a lot. Okay. Where'd my preview go? I don't know. There it is. I think that looks pretty good. What do you all think? The shadow is subtle enough, right? Blur it a little bit more. I'm very particular about my shadows. If you can't tell yet, that'll do. All right, so we have these 2 shapes created. Now we want to create an additional component. And the reason I'm not using this one here is the style might be very different. So we're going to create a new component, press the plus button, and I'm going to call this one, let's say dates. And what we want to do now is start exploring how states can help create additional styles. So I have this main component with our selected state. I'm going to go ahead and press that plus button over to the right within the properties inspector, and I'm going to create a new state. And this is going to be, let's say, unselected. There we go. Now what we can do is we can dive in and make changes to create that unselected state. So first thing, I'm going to change the text color to white. I'm going to select this background, and I'm going to sample the background blue, but then drop the color so that we have almost like an indent. And then maybe I'll add a little bit of a white border and drop the opacity. Again, so we have a bit of an indent on there. We can also maybe select that blue and then drop the color a little bit. There we go. So we have our default state and we have our unselected state, right? And now what we can do is we can duplicate one over to the right, which again is our instance, but we can switch over to our unselected state and switch this over to, let's say, March 3rd. And then we can do one more over here. And this will be March 4th. You make sure these line up. I'm going to select all 3 of these, and at the top right-hand corner, I can go ahead and press the Distribute Horizontally button. There we go. Wonderful, right? Let's go ahead and give this a little bit of space. And just to make our lives a little bit easier, I'm going to go ahead and group this. I'll call this dates. and then duplicate this entire group downwards. And then we can use this for our times. I'll just change this to times, or I guess for, yeah, that works. And then I'll dive in here, and maybe this will be 8 a.m. And you know what? Maybe this will be the unselected. I'll switch that over. Let's go ahead and change this to 8 o'clock a.m. And maybe this one will be selected. And this will be 8:30. And this one will be non-selected, so 9 o'clock a.m. And there we go. Beautiful. All right, the last two things we might want to add at the bottom, a little bit of text and then a good old button. So we have some text up here. I'm gonna actually just drag it on down to duplicate, and I held down Alt-Option. And then we can't wait to see you on, and then March 2nd at 8:30 a.m. And maybe to emphasize the March 2nd part, I'm gonna bold that and then drop this. I'm simply just dragging to select, to regular, and maybe I'll make sure to superscript. There we go. Oh, so Sam is asking exactly what I just did. So what I did, let me actually undo, actually no. Basically just select the text that you want to superscript or subscript, and then right over here to the right, superscript, subscript. Fancy. All right, now right below we want one button to confirm. So with the rectangle one more time, we're gonna drag one out.
Wait a minute.
Somewhere about here. And here's where you have to start thinking about the user experience, right? Let me make sure to center this. Is up here, we have our text fields with slightly rounded corners and white background. So what you probably don't want to do is have the exact same style. So if you have 8 pixels like this, and then confirm, right? Something like this. This could potentially, especially for elderly users who might not really understand user experience and design, they might think that this is a text field because it's the exact same style as these up here. So this one, I'm simply going to round out completely just to give it a little bit of a different style, right? And maybe just to really let them know that they have to click on this, click to confirm. Confirm. Spelling is hard. Let's bump it down to 18. We'll see what that looks like. That could potentially work. And even though we're not using this button again on this particular artboard or form, we may be using it somewhere else. So we can also create a component out of this. So I have both of these selected. Press that plus button. We have our default state. We can also create hover states as well. So if you did want to create a hover state, you can go ahead and just press hover state. And I don't know what I would do with this. Maybe I'll just turn a shadow on. A very subtle shadow. Something like that. And now we have our default state and our hover state. And we can hover and we have our shadow, right? And if we don't need any sort of animation, we can always hop into prototype mode. We're going to talk a lot more about prototyping in a future challenge, but we can always change this to transition with no animation. That way we can just hover. I think that shadow's a little bit too strong. So I'll dive in here. Add a little bit of blue. That's better, right? Simple. I think it might be a little bit too... Let me drag this out. Too skinny. And now we can really start finessing everything into place if we need to, right? We can group all these, call this fields. Fields. Move it up a touch. Move these up a touch, right? Just so we have a nice amount of padding. You know what? I think that button, I think it's a little bit too small. And there we go. And again, we're going to talk about stacks and padding in a future challenge, but what I would probably do is select all this information, pop it into a group, turn a stack on. It's going to define it as a vertical stack, and I can very easily move this information around. Or, you know, if I add more information at the bottom, right, I can duplicate this. The background is automatically going to resize to make that form bigger, which is great. I can also drag this outwards. I'll play around with that as well, but you can do those things. Again, we're going to talk about stacks and padding in a future challenge, but that is how to design out a sign-up form using components and states in XD. Hope you all enjoyed this challenge. If you want to catch up and watch another Ruth and Tatiana, Samuel, Cornell, Bruce, Umacorn, another Samuel, and Sam, 10 coming right up, and I'll see you all tomorrow.